Now, what does SQL stand for? So it stands for structured query language. How do we select all rows, all records from a table? So we use the syntax select star from the table name. Define join and different types of joins. So join keyword is used to fetch data from two or more related tables. It returns rows where there is at least one match in both the tables, included in the join. We have mainly these types of joins: right join, outer join, full join, cross join, self join, and left join as well. Now, what is the syntax to add a record in the table? So to add a record, we use the insert syntax, that is insert into table name the values we have. And how do you add a column in to the table? To add another column, we use alter table name, and then add the column name that we want to add. Then define SQL delete statement. So delete is used to delete a row or rows from a table based on the specified condition. So the basic syntax is as follows: delete from the table name we mentioned where the condition comes here, right? Then we have defined commit. Commit saves all changes made by a DML statement. What is the primary key? It is a column whose values uniquely identify every row in a table. They can never be reused, and these are basically non-null values. Primary keys are non-null values which uniquely identify every single row in the table. What are foreign keys? When a table's primary key field is added to related tables in order to create the common field which relates the two tables, it is called a foreign key in another table. Foreign key constraints enforce referential integrity among the tables. Now, what is a check constraint? A check constraint is used to limit the values or the type of data that can be stored in a column. They are used to enforce domain integrity. Is it possible for a table to have more than one foreign key? Yes, a table can have many foreign keys, but only one primary key, because a foreign key ensures referential integrity. That means it can relate to other tables using those foreign keys or columns. But only one single primary key exists in a table because it is unique and it identifies or the rows uniquely, and it is non-null, right? Now, what are the possible values for the Boolean data field? So we have -1 or 0, that is true or false. What is the stored procedure? It is a set of SQL queries that can take input and send back output, right? Now, what is normalization? It is the process of table design to minimize data redundancy. We need to divide the database into two or more tables and define the relationship between them. What is a trigger? A trigger allows us to execute a batch of SQL code when a tabled event occurs, that is insert, update, or delete, or select commands which are executed against a specific table. How to select random rows from a table? So using a sample clause, we can select random rows. For example, select star from table name sample 10. Now, which TCP/IP port does SQL Server run on? By default, it runs on port 1433. Now, write a SQL select query that only returns each name only once from a table. So to get the result as each name's only once, we need to use the distinct keyword, that is select distinct name from table name. Now, explain the concept of DML and DDL. So DML stands for data manipulation language, that is related to table manipulation. The records within the table, it manipulates that data. So we have select, insert, update, and delete as the DML statements. Then DDL statements are data definition language that are used to create the create the tables and manage the tables. So create, alter, drop, rename are DDL statements. Create, alter, rename, and drop. So you can remember this from this. We have select also here in data manipulation. So we have basically SIDU in DML, that is select, insert, delete, and update as DML commands or statements. And for DDL, we have card, that is the acronym we can use, that is create, A for alter, R for rename, and D for drop. Now, can we rename a column in the output of the SQL query? Yes, we can. So select column name as new name from the table name. So this is the alias name. Now, give the order of SQL select. So the order of SQL select clause is select from where, group by, having, order by. Only the select and from clauses are mandatory. Right now, suppose a student column has two columns, name and marks. How do we get names and marks of the top three students? Select name marks from student S1 where 3 less than equal to select count staff from student S2 where S1 dot marks is equal to S2 dot marks. So we use a subquery. This is a subquery. Now, what are the SQL comments? So SQL comments can be inserted by adding two consecutive hyphens. Now, difference between truncate, delete, and drop commands. So delete removes some or all the rows from a table based on any pre-mentioned condition. It can be rolled back. Truncate removes all the rows from a table by deallocating the memory pages. The operation of truncate cannot be rolled back. Drop command removes the table from the database completely. Now, what are the properties of a transaction? So we have asset properties: atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. Now, what do you mean by row width? So it's an 18 character long pseudo column attached to each row of a table. Define union, minus, union all, and intersect. So minus returns all distinct rows selected by the first query but not by the second. Union returns all distinct rows selected by either query. So the union, is basically in terms of Venn diagrams. Union is A, union B. So both the areas. Union all returns all rows selected by either query, including all duplicates. So if we have more tables, union all would take all the space. Minus returns all distinct rows selected by the first query but not by the second. So for example, if we have Venn diagram A and B, so A minus B would give us this area, right? So the B part is excluded. Then intersect returns all distinct rows selected by both queries. So A intersection B, you know already using the Venn diagram, is this area, the intersection or the common area bounded by both the circular regions. Now, what is a transaction? A transaction is a sequence of code that runs against a database. It takes the database from one consistent state to another. Difference between unique and primary key constraints. So a table can have only one primary key, whereas there can be any number of unique keys. The primary key cannot contain null values, whereas the unique key can contain null values. What is a composite primary key? It is a primary key created on more than one column is a composite primary key. Now, what is an index? It is a special structure associated with the table to speed up the performance of queries. The index can be created on one or more columns of table. Now, what is a subquery? A subquery is a subset of select statements whose return values are used in filtering conditions of the main query. What do you mean by query optimization? So, query optimization is a process in which the database system compares different query strategies and selects the query with the least cost. Now, what is referential integrity? Set of rules that restrict the values of one or more columns of the tables based on the values of the primary key or unique key of the reference table. Now, define a temp table. A temp table is a temporary storage structure to store the data temporarily. How can we avoid duplicating records in a query? So, by using distinct keyword, duplication of records in a query can be avoided. Difference between rename and alias. Rename is a permanent name given to a table or column, whereas alias is a temporary name given to a table or a column. What is a view? A view is actually a virtual table that contains data from one or more tables. They restrict, that is, views restrict data access to the table by selecting only required values and making complex queries easy. What are advantages of views? So advantages of views are views restrict access to data because the view can display selective columns from the table, and they can be used to make simple queries to retrieve results of complicated queries. For example, views can be used to query information from multiple tables without the user knowing. Now list the various privileges that a user can grant to another user. So select, connect, and resources. What is a schema? It is a collection of database objects of a user. A table is a basic unit of data storage in DBMS, database management system. Table data is stored in the form of rows and columns. Does view contain data? No, views are actually virtual structures. Can a view be based on another view? Yes, a view is based on another view. What is the difference between having clause and where clause? So both specify a search condition, but the having clause is used only with the select statement and typically used with the group by clause. If the group by clause is not used, then having behaved like the where clause only. So after group by, we must have a having clause in order to perform a function similar to where. Where can come independently as well. What is the difference between local and global temporary tables? So if defined inside a compound statement, a local temporary table exists only for the duration of that statement, but a global temporary table exists permanently in the database, but its rows disappear when the connection is closed. Now, what is CTE? A CTE is basically a common table expression that contains a temporary result set which is defined in an SQL statement.